Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Pantheon, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So other than seeing the trailer, which a lot of that was out of context, so I got some of it, but I wasn't quite sure where, what all that this show entailed, and I really like that we are basically breaking the show, at least for this first episode. We'll have to wait and see episode 2 afterwards to see kind of it continues that. But at the very least, it seems like we're following 3 main characters, and like I said, that might kind of expand going forward. But it's like there's Madison, there's Caspian, and there's Chanda. So starting off with Maddie, kind of finding out about her circumstances, that she's getting bullied the way she is, which is like horrendous. And she even had that conversation, and I guess that's her from the future talking in retrospect about how, they were so caught up in their own drama, they basically didn't see that the end was upon us. So basically they're bullying her, and then she starts noticing every little action she does, like putting her hair behind her ear, they do that. When she crosses her legs, they do that too. It's little microaggression, but it's just little added things just to poke fun at her. And so that's and calling her ugly, saying that I bet you wish you could kill yourself, don't you? You're like, Jesus. And the sad thing is, obviously, it's been 2 years since her dad died. It's not something she's talked about. It's not something her mom's really brought up either, because I think her mom didn't want to bring too much more attention to her daughter, because who knows what their relationship was like necessarily before, because it seemed like it might not have been great even before, but it probably got even worse after her dad died. It doesn't seem like her mom's a bad person or anything. It's not like that. It just seems like they probably didn't click. It's like her and her dad clicked, but who knows about her and her mom, and just, or at the very least, her dad was kind of the middle ground that kind of connected them, and now that he's gone, they've kind of lost, that connection between them has kind of gotten severed and slimmer, and so she doesn't even talk to her mom about everything she's going through. She was going to open up to her grandmother at one point in time until she saw the picture, and she's just like, you know what, I'm not going to worry my grandmother about this, and she decided to kind of handle it on, deal with it. It's just, I'm gonna just grit my teeth and deal with it. Because in the past, when her dad was sick, he was asking her to talk to her mom, and it's well, why do you want me to do that? Because she's like, oh, if you want me to talk to mom all of a sudden, it's because you think you're not going to be around, and you want me and mom to be close so that we at least have each other when you're gone. And he tried to say, no, if I wanted you to have a computer, I would have given you mine and not giving you your mom's old crappy computer. And it's I want you to talk to your mom because your mom is your mom. But I don't. That's why I feel like her and her mom probably had a very contentious relationship even back then, but it's probably got even worse post her dad dying. So, but then she starts getting these weird messages from someone through this chat log, which I immediately was okay, knowing the context of everything, I already kind of knew it was her father, but I thought it was really interesting that he was only speaking in emojis, and I was wondering why. And I guess it's because the way they've got him set up, he can only talk that way. They wanted to limit it any way he was able to approach the outside, but he's the one that was watching everything that his daughter was going through. So when Maddie shows up to school the next day or whatever, after the messaging back and forth, turns out basically he set it up so that group of mean girls turned on each other. I was like, wow. So the message that the main mean girl sent to Maddie, sent that to one of her friends and make her think she was talking about her, and then it's and then all of a sudden she sees the boyfriend or the guy that she likes is with one of her friends, so it's tearing that entire group apart. And I guess something got leaked publicly, and she immediately was which one of you hacked my phone, because she assumed it was one of her friends that, well, quote unquote friends that did it. And for Maddie, she was happy. She's like, oh my god, it's for her, it's getting retribution on her bullies, watching them kind of fall apart. Not just fall apart, tear each other apart, because they've been such a tough unit that joined together to terrorize her, but now it's they're terrorizing each other. It's that clique has started to fall apart. So, but then her mom stumbles across everything, and Ellen seems to, at first it's okay, you're talking to some stranger on the internet, which, hey, I can understand what that mom's coming from. Ellen's coming from that perspective. It's it's super dangerous. But then the messenger used emojis that immediately Ellen recognized what they represent. They were from a poem that's very special between her and Maddie's dad, and she immediately called whoever she can who's in the middle of all of this, being like, what did you do to my husband? So she's in the know about some stuff, whatever it is. She kind of talks to Maddie about it later on in the episode. We'll probably get full context for it in episode 2, the full explanation at the very least, at least Ellen's side of things, because we know Ellen's kind of in this world as well, so maybe that's how her and her husband met. But at the very least, it must have been an experimental thing of like, okay, your husband's dying, his body's dying, we can save him. And maybe Ellen was under the impression like, my husband was dead. The attempt to upload his mind, his, consciousness and everything failed and he's gone. But now she's like, no, he's actually still alive. You lied to me. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe she thought they had some experimental treatment that didn't work. He died and they kind of did this. Maybe that's what it is. But Ellen definitely immediately knew something was wrong. And the fact that she knew exactly who to call, because not unless she works, or the fact that she called them either means she works for that company, or maybe at the very least they reached out to her when her husband was sick. So I think that's part of the story that she's keeping from Maddie. We'll ultimately have to wait and see how that plays out. But Maddie is trying to get answers because she overheard her mom's conversation, which kind of ties into Caspian's story, which he kind of he's a very smart kid, and he meets, she's like, oh, Caspian. She's like, from Narnia. He's like, yeah, exactly. And she's like, I'm Hannah. He's like, oh, like Montana. And he kind of looks at himself like, oh, why the hell did I say that? There was that line from that girl, too, that was like, oh, stay away from him. He's just so unfriendly goth kid. And basically implying like, oh, yeah, he's got all the telltale signs of a certain... I won't repeat it just for the context of the video, but that was kind of fucked up what she said. But he's got a really good head on his shoulders, and somehow I was wondering like what, because I almost thought they were going to be on opposite sides of things for whatever reason. Not like the trailer necessarily set that up, but I thought he would have been on the opposite side, which technically he might still be. Like, with what they're setting him up, like his whole life circumstance, because we meet his mom, but his mom seems to be someone that's meant to keep an eye on him. Like, I don't know if that's not, like, maybe that's not her, like, biological kid. It's just, like, right, it might be a situation of they're adopted parents, but them adopting him was, like, super on purpose, and they're meant to keep an eye on him. Or they are his biological parents, and it feels like it might be an adopted parent situation. But it's like, yeah, his dad, like, pushing him to be like, oh, like, giving him, like, that whole equation or that problem to solve. Then I was like, that whole conversation went super over my head. But it all started because his mom was like, oh, I'm going to make he's like, the husband was like, oh, I thought you were going to make a home-cooked meal. She's like, I did. I cooked it. He was like, yeah, I've had Chinese food Monday through Thursday. He's like, yeah, but I cooked it, so it is a home cooked meal, so that whole thing. And like him kind of getting put in his place by Caspian, you're like, oh yeah, because he acts like that guy acted like such hot shit, and then Caspian put him in his place, and then like his wife kind of bumping him, being like, oh, I might not have figured it out, but at least I know what a home cooked meal is, unlike you. And he kind of snaps. He was like, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, that's a meal. Slams stuff off the table and walks away. And then she's crying. I was like, at first I thought she was going to start like crying. She was crying, and I thought she'd start bursting out laughing. But then like the moment she's crying, and then like she stops, I was like, it was a fucking performance. She goes out there to talk to him, and she's like, meatloaf and mashed potatoes. He's like, I don't know, I improvised. So it's like the whole thing was a front, and then she has to go, okay. Yeah, you go back to your horse. I'm like, okay, so they're putting on this whole performance so that he's none the wiser that, like, he's just someone they're tasked with look after. Like I said, I don't think they're biological parents. It just feels like adopted parents. Like, either, like, his biological parents die and he kind of got, left to these particular parents, or they got him from, like, a foster system. But it seems like, was it Logarithm, the company that's involved in all of this, seems like they have a vested interest in him. But maybe it has to do with all of this, because when the show originally, during the trailers, I did a discussion video, and I wasn't sure whether this show was going to be more Upload or more Westworld, and it seems like it is more Westworld. They even kind of go like, right, we're not talking AI here, because that's one of the business guys was like, oh, isn't that the whole, the singularity, and it's like, isn't that the whole thing of like, AI's taking, like robots taking over, and it's like, no, we're not talking AI, we're talking UI, because if you've never seen the show Upload on Amazon Prime, it's basically basically this premise, except, uploading human consciousness and the mind, but it is a science fictional comedy. A la like the Good Place type of that, like, or yeah, I'd say it's like a more science fictional Good Place to kind of make a comparison. Whereas Westworld is all about AI, so it kind of gave me a better understanding of like, okay, so that's the lane we're going down. And Chanda is at the center of this whole thing because it seems like he works for a company in Mumbai, but he's talking to people here in the States, which even he was kind of getting a little antsy because it's like, right, they find out about this. Because I don't know, because I think that would probably fall under the category of like corporate espionage, and I think you could go away, that'd be like a felony. I mean, who knows like what that is from an international standpoint, but it's like, going from one company to company, I think that would be, I don't know if that, that's where I'm allocating this as, but I don't know if it would even 100% count as like that. But I feel like the fact is he's antsy means like he knows he'd get in serious trouble with like his government, for kind of like talking to someone else about it. So they are offering him kind of like a whole bunch to kind of work here, because he's talking about like whoever gets on the first leap of this UI situation, because he's talking about how it will revolutionize the world, that basically humanity will be able to relax, that basically UI will be able to be the future, that it give new opportunities for the younger generation is kind of what he's saying. I guess it's almost like this interesting contrast with the whole AI perspective of things, where like, okay, like everything becoming automated is kind of like the bad thing, because it's like, right, so many people will be out of their jobs. So I'm wondering, he didn't fully go into it, or maybe he did and I just didn't really get into the understand the ins and outs of it, but it did make him almost sound like he was comparing that UI to the AI situation of like automation kind of replacing human jobs. It seems like UI is going to do the same thing, but it's a betterment, and it won't have like the terrible backlash that an AI like automated system would. At least that's the way he's kind of painting it, and he says that it will bring about new opportunities. I'm wondering, I mean, I understand the UI perspective of it just from the perspective of immortality, but like the proper applications of it in a societal standpoint, I didn't quite catch that, because I feel like you would still be suffering the same ramifications of the automation with AI. The same societal issues would be there, just, but maybe, like I said, maybe I just didn't quite catch the nuance of his explanation of it. I did, once again, this is like some deep science stuff, and, science fiction, but also like based in, like there is like science to it, but there's obviously like the heavy science fictional overtone to it as well. And a lot of it goes over my head because I'm not a smart person. I know you're shocked, but still, we did see that he got dragged. That was kind of sad. It's like, oh, Mr. Chanda, him and the driver pull away, and you see that there's another person, and they like drug him and knock him out. So there's that. Like I said, Caspian tying his story in with Maddie's, that he's responding to her on the message boards about her dad and everything. And I thought that was such an interesting thing, because we got that flashback with Maddie when she kind of was believing these conspiracies about like the Illuminati and aliens, and her dad had the perspective of everyone wants to believe that there's some greater conspiracy. It basically allows people to be at ease, because it makes it better if like, oh, there's some entity or organization or something controlling something, because then it isn't just as so random of life. At least you can rationalize like, okay, an organization or a person being behind the way the world works and everything makes it's an easier pill to swallow than just kind of accepting the fact is that life is made of nothing but like randomness, and like calls out like, that there's randomness to it all, that there's kind of no rhyme or reason. Because the example uses aliens didn't build the temples, like everything kind of lends itself more so to believe like, oh, it was man-made. So he's not someone that believes in conspiracies, which is, I think, supposed to be the ironic nature of it all, considering it's like, oh, his daughter is about to be smack dab, kind of already is smack dab in the middle of a conspiracy, because of all of this. And her mom's obviously upset because she doesn't want her to be asking any questions about all this, because I think Ellen at the time is like, because she doesn't have all the answers, and I think she's scared of like, right, if I put my daughter down this path, like, and if we find out it's not what it is, then I brought her all this pain and resurface all of this for nothing. Or it could just be like, I don't want her in the middle of all of this truth. She even tried breaking up with the guy she's currently dating. What's his name? Gabe. And he kind of allocates it as like, oh, like, well, you know, it sounds like his ex Julie like just left him, whereas like obviously with David, Maddie's dad, Ellen's husband died, so that's the correlation there. I guess it's like, right, he's been in her life for 6 months. They've been dating for 3, and she likes him, and he even says like, no, I love you, and he's like, I love you too, and it's like she does want to move forward. But I think she's kind of stuck because like she does know there's something more to this, because even her saying it's something you won't understand nor believe. So she already probably knows some truth about the David situation. It just seems like she doesn't have the full context of it. So she's left in the dark to some extent. Which she's asking questions at school, you know, on the computer, because someone, was an angry angel, kind of responded to her. So while that's happening, she gets confronted by, Samara, the bully, who's like, oh, it was you that hacked my phone. She's like, oh, tell me, like, oh, I'm gonna kick your ass. And then her mom is like, who are you? And were you threatening my daughter? And grabs on her, and she, Maddie's like, Mom, calm down. And she's like, you touch my daughter like that again, I'll kick your ass. And I'm just totally okay with suffering the consequences. Understood? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, kind of nice for her to get put in her place. Granted, that's not going to necessarily help, because when you're obviously not around, Maddie's going to have to deal with the ramifications of that too. So we'll see. But like I brought up earlier, Ellen is going to explain everything to her. Didn't want to, but feels like she has no choice, because Maddie does deserve to know the truth, no matter what it is. So there's also the angry angel person that reached out to Maddie is tied to Caspian, because Caspian reached out to this person being like, oh, is this you? Which I think people from Logarithm are like, I keep saying Logarithm, I know it's like it's something like that. Either way, they, I guess, are monitoring the conversations. They kind of like date back his conversations with this person. It's like, okay, 10 chat logs over the past 5 months. So once again, I'm assuming they're the same people that's got an eye on him. Maybe, maybe not. But then later on, they get hit by a virus or whatever, and the guy's calling up the guy Pope about it, and it's like, what is this going, like, what's going on? We don't know who's doing this. So like, they're unplugging all their hard drives and stuff because it's a cyber attack, and they're trying to mitigate it as much as possible by like, turning off every computer to make sure none of their data is accessed or copied or, you know, whatever. But the guy on the other side says like, oh, she isn't the only one that's potentially in the know or aware. So I'm assuming that's in reference to Ellen, but I could be mistaken. I interpret that, and especially because they zoom out and show you all the computers, that is, you know, implying that David isn't the only one. Kind of implying that, oh, other people realize that some of the people that they care about have been taken, is kind of what... Because there's also been other conspiracies that were mixed in when Ellen was putting her post up, that there were conversations about what that company is involved in. I'm trying to think about what that was necessarily. I want to say it was something about weapons and stuff like that they might be involved in. I don't remember. They were just like passing like remarks on this whole thread, like that she was like a part of, like when she made her posts and stuff. But now I'm wondering, like, okay, so, like, Caspian must be aware of what's up, because he was asking Maddie for her proof. So could it be that maybe, like, if we go back to the assumption that, like, right, it's a biological parent situation, that maybe, like, his mom or dad or both were involved in this whole situation and they disappeared? And maybe they eventually want his mind as well, because, they're experimenting on this secretly, taking people and doing this without the general public's knowing. And I think that is, in a very like AI Terminator type of way, it's going to blow up in their face, a la Skynet type of situation. But we'll see. Obviously, this is just me watching the first episode. Once again, a lot of big brain. Jesus, can't speak. Big brain like things. Like I said, some of it I feel like I'm grasping a decent enough concept of, but I feel like there is so much that is probably going over my head that I'm missing But I think it is a nice setting stage to be like, okay, so introducing some of the players involved and kind of getting a little like step in this world, probably like in conjunction with episode 2, will probably like lean into it even more, kind of give you a better understanding, a better picture of where we're going. But it's probably going to be one of those mystery type of shows where it probably like, you know, strings you along too, because like any good mystery. But I feel like we're at least setting the stage to things, and probably episode 2 will give you a lot more explanation about things. So I have to watch episode 2 to really get a context for it. But I'm really interested to, you know, kind of get full context about everything and see what direction all of this ends up heading going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.